Hello, everyone. I am going to go over Chapter 4, Tissues, Glands, and Membranes. We'll look at all of the topics that are covered under the overview. So if you will just review some of those, I think that you'll be well prepared. Some of the key terms, and of course the learning objectives that we'll be covering under the tissues. So just to look over those briefly. Again, you will have an objective quiz at the end of this for Chapter 4 under your modules in Canvas, so please be sure to take that. Okay. So when we look at the origins of tissues, all tissues can be derived from stem cells, and those stem cells are either going to be of embryonic or adult origin. And there are four main groups of tissues that we'll look at, and their location and what their characteristics are, as well as the differences between endocrine and exocrine glands. So histology is the study of tissues. There are four main groups: the epithelial, the connective, the muscle, and the nervous. They form a protective covering for the body, such as the outer layer of the skin, and it also forms membranes and ducts around organs and ducts in the lining of glands. It lines the body cavities and hollow organs as well. The structure can be classified either by shape or by the number of layers. So there are three different types of shapes for epithelial tissue: the squamous, the cuboidal, and the columnar. The layers, if it's one layer, it's simple. If it's more than one layer thick, it's called stratified. And if it appears to be more than one layer, but it is not, it is called pseudostratified. And I'll have some pictures so that you can see that. So if we look at the simple epithelium, simple meaning that it's a single layer, it allows for materials such as oxygen, okay, or blood cells to pass from one system into another, so from your blood vessels into other tissues. The type of cell, again, can be characterized by its shape. The squamous is flat and irregular. It has a flat nuclei. It can be found in capillary walls, the lungs, the glomerular capsule of the kidney, as well as some of the serous membranes, of which we'll be going over. The cuboidal cells are square and they have a round nuclei. They're found in tubes and ducts, such as the kidney, the liver, and glands. And then the columnar are long and narrow, and then they have an oval nuclei, and it can be found in the lining of the stomach, in the intestine, and the oviducts. The pseudostratified are only found with the columnar cells, and they appear to be stratified, meaning more than one layer, and they're not, and they line respiratory passages. So if you look at this, in terms of the simple epithelial cells, these are examples of them, and it's just in one layer, and the nuclei are very defined and they're round, and then they can be found in blood vessels. Here in a glandular tissue, such as the pancreatic duct, you'll find some of these cuboidal cells, and they look like little squares, and they have round nuclei. Then these are the columnar, and they can be found in the oviduct and they have oval-shaped nuclei. But all of these are only one layer thick, if you look, so that means simple. Okay, so stratified is just saying that you have multiple layers, so one layer on top of the other. And again, the name is derived by what it looks like. If it's squamous, then it's a thin layer, and it's irregular shaped cells. The cuboidal are like little squares. The columnar are long and narrow. And then we have one last type of stratified epithelium, and that's the traditional. And these are the square cells that, and they flatten and they stretch, so they have some elasticity there. And you get an example of where you find those is in the urinary bladder. So here is a stratified. And if you note, there are many layers thick here, stratified, and we find this in the vagina. You will find the stratified layered squamous cells in areas where you are connecting with the outside world, and like inside your mouth, in the vagina, where you can have some abrasions. So some of the special functions of epithelial cells is that they have goblet cells, especially like with the columnar cells, and they trap and secrete some mucus into the digestive organs and into the respiratory tract. And then some of these cells have some cilia, which you will find in your respiratory tract, and they sweep some particles up out of the way from the lungs, and they are capable of repairing and replacing themselves quickly because of abrasion. So here are some examples of some goblet cells that you'll find. Okay, so they are found in the lining of the trachea and in the intestine. So another type of epithelial cell are some glands, and those can either be classified as exocrine, which deliver their products to other regions and out of the body. Endocrine glands, those are they deliver hormones to other regions of the body. You can also have an exocrine gland that delivers its product to a hollow organ. So what are the three basic shapes of epithelial cells? So you would have the squamous, the cuboidal, and then you would have the columnar. And what are the two categories of glands? That would be the exocrine and the endocrine. So when we look at the pop quiz here, you're studying a slide in the anatomy lab, and you see several layers of tile-shaped cells. But you have several layers, so that is giving it away that it can't be simple, because that's only one layer. Stratified is more than one, and tile-shaped. So that would be like a tile, like a squamous cell. Okay, and then what's an example of an endocrine gland? So endocrine would be delivering its products within the body, and so it would not have its secretions to the outside. So that would all automatically eliminate C and D. So then you are left with glands that secrete hydrochloric acid into the stomach, and then the pancreas secretes insulin, which regulates blood sugar. And so in this, it's a little hard, but it's the pancreas. Okay, the hydrochloric acid into the stomach, that is not a hormone. The pancreas with the hormone of insulin, that was a little tough, but in any event. So then classifying the different types of connective tissue. So connective tissue is another form of a structural support for the body, and it has a lot of these matrix cells. So they could be connective tissue can be categorized based upon its physical properties. Are they circulating? Are they generalized, or are they structural? So one that's circulating is blood. Blood is a connective tissue. It has a matrix. It has all of those other cells that are traveling around in it, and it carries nutrients and gases and waste and other materials throughout the body. It has lymph and blood are the two types of circulating connective tissue. Then generalized, these are widely distributed, and they're not highly specialized. They are of a nature that they can either be loose or dense. Other types are defined as well based upon their hardness, and that would be cartilage and bone. So when we look at loose connective tissue, it's either of one or two types. It's either areolar or it's adipose. The areolar is found around organs and also under the membrane of the skin, and then the adipose is around organs and joints and also under the skin. Adipose is a fat, and it is composed of modified fat cells. So if we look here at circulating and loose connective tissue, this is a blood smear, and you can see all of the different kinds of cells that are in that blood. You have red blood cells and platelets and white blood cells, okay? So all of that is circulating, but it's a type of connective tissue, both blood and lymph. Then the other is the form of loose connective tissue, which is a form of the generalized type of connective tissue, and that has, again, here you have some collagen as well as some other cells and some capillaries there. So it's considered to be loose, not dense. Then this is of fat cells. All of these are adipose cells. Okay, so, and then the next type that is classified under the connective tissue is the dense connective tissue. Those are either irregular or regular. And the way that you can look at this is by considering whether or not they are where they are located. So if the irregular dense covers organs, the regular dense is regular, so it's all in the same line, and those are like tendons and ligaments. So all of that connective tissue is lined up in a straight line. And then we also have some elastic, which they are not mentioning here, but that is found in your vocal cords. But so you have some idea for its location. Cartilage is also a type of connective tissue, but it's considered to be under support. So we have, the three different types. Let's go back and look at that again. So we have the circulating, which is the blood, circulating blood and lymph. Generalized is classified as either loose or dense, and that's where I just finished. The loose are either adipose, tissues, or they are going to be the areolar, and then you have the structural ones, which are the bone and the cartilage. Okay, so back again where we are here. So cartilage. There are three different types of cartilage. Hyaline cartilage covers the ends of all the bones, and like the tip of your nose, the sternum, and the larynx and the trachea. The fibrocartilage, it's found between the vertebra and the anterior pubic joint and the knee joint. The elastic is a type of cartilage. Some books will put the elastic here. Sometimes they actually insert it under the type of dense connective tissue. And so the larynx, the epiglottis, and the outer ear, of course, that's elastic. So it stretches. Bone is a type of structural connective tissue, and of course it makes up the bones of your skeleton, provides structure and support, and it works to with the muscles to produce some movement. And we have the dense connective tissue and the cartilage and bone here, so that you can see this. And if you look here, we have, these are chondrocytes, which are cartilage cells. Here, these are osteocytes. These are bone cells, okay? And then here we have some dense connective tissue, which would be found for the bone. And then here, this is hyaline, which is found on the coverings of the bones, okay? So what's the general name for the intracellular material in connective tissue? And then, so these are just for you to go back over what protein that would be cartilage, and what type of cell characterizes the dense connective tissue. Cartilage and bone. So cartilage would be the chondrocyte, and the bone would be the osteocyte. Okay, so a pop quiz. Chondrocytes are to cartilage as osteocytes are to, and that would be bone. And then you are studying a slide of the body tissue in an anatomy lab. You see a few similar cells that do not contact each other, and many thick collagen fibers oriented in the same direction. So what would that be? So if it's oriented in the same direction, it would be dense connective tissue, because then that would be like a tendon or a ligament, right? Which is a type of a dense connective tissue. So that was a little tough there. So when we look at muscle tissue, they can either be skeletal, which is voluntary. You know, we have control over the movement of our muscles, our skeletal muscles. And when you look at them under the slide, they are striated, meaning that they look like they have lines in it. Cardiac muscle is involuntary. Another name for that is the myocardium. And of course, it does not, you know, we don't have to think about our heart beating. And then smooth muscle is also involuntary, and it's the part of our organs, and it's unstriated. So here you can see some pictures of the various types of muscle tissue. This is skeletal muscle, and you can see the striations there, okay? And then this is cardiac muscle, okay? And then this is that which is in the organs. So that's a type of a visceral muscle, okay? Smooth muscle. So the three types again are the skeletal, the visceral, or the smooth, and then the cardiac muscle. Which tissue is striated and under involuntary control, and of course that would be cardiac. So lastly with this is the nervous system, and we're looking at the brains, the nerve, and the spinal cords. There are two different types of cell types, the neuron and neuroglia. The neuron is your basic nervous tissue. It conducts nerve impulses, and it has two parts. It has a body, a cell body, and then long fibers. You get a bunch of these nerve bundled, and they're held together with connective tissue. And neuroglia cells, they actually protect the nervous tissue. They are not involved in the transmission of nerve impulses themselves. So if you look at the brain and the spinal cord, we have both white and gray matter. So the white and then the gray matter here, and that would be a neuron. This is a nerve bundle here. Okay, so it's a bundle of nerves, and we'll talk about that in a later chapter. And then this is one nerve cell or one neuron. It has a cell body with a nucleus, and then these are the nerve fibers that help in the transmission of the nerve impulse. So again, some of these checkpoints. The basic cell of the nervous system is the neuron, and then the non-conducting supporting cells are those neuroglia cells. And then when we look at membranes, there are three different types of epithelial membranes and 6 types of connective tissue membranes. So when we look at that, they cover surfaces, they serve as dividers, they line all of the organs of our body cavities, they anchor organs together or to the body wall, and then they secrete some kinds of lubricants so that you have ease of movement. So like when you are this membrane is lining your lungs, and when you breathe and you expand your lungs, well, it is not painful. So it provides for some kind of lubrication there. There are two main categories of these membranes. They're either epithelial or they are connective tissue membranes. The epithelial membranes are found on the outer surface, and they consist of 3 different types. It's a serous membrane, a mucous membrane, or a cutaneous membrane. The cutaneous membrane is just your skin. The serous membrane is going to line all of your body cavities and cover all of your internal organs, like each organ gets covered by a serous membrane. And then the mucous membranes are those things that you can envision that have some mucus being produced. So they line tubes and ducts to the outside of the body. The serous membrane, there are 3 different types: the pleura, the serous pericardium, and the peritoneum. And so they don't connect to the outside, and they secrete this serous fluid that acts as a lubricant. So the pleura, whenever you think of pleura, think of your lungs. There are 2 different layers, and the way that you can envision this, imagine that you have a balloon and you are, and my fist is the organ. Well, this would be like enfolding that balloon, pushing it in from the outside, and you're creating this pocket. Well, it does this number. It goes like this, right? And comes up and around. So you have a double layer that is being produced. Viscera means organ. So the lining that is most close to the organ itself is known as the visceral layer. The one on the outside is the parietal layer. The serous pericardium is that which goes over the heart, cardium, heart. And then the peritoneum is everything, is the lining within the abdominal cavity itself, and it covers all of the abdominal organs. So this is what I was talking about, the organization of which. So this, the hand would be the organ. The lining that is going right around the organ is the visceral peritoneum, or the visceral layer, and then the outer layer would be the parietal. Okay, so here you have the visceral pericardium going around the heart, and then it enfolds and goes around the outside, and that would be the parietal. Okay. The mucous membranes, they line all of the ducts that open up to the outside. They trap and remove foreign particles. They protect deeper tissue, and they absorb some food. So now if we look at the connective tissue, not the epithelial, but onto the connective tissue membranes, they don't have any epithelium. Those are of several different types. So we have synovial membranes. They line all of our joint cavities. So like our shoulder. The meninges, they are coverings or membranes over our brain and our spinal cord. So when you consider like an inflammation of the spinal cord and the brain, that would be meningitis. The fascia, there are two different types. There's either the superficial or the deep. The superficial fascia is right underneath the skin, and it's connecting to the adipose tissue, so it serves to insulate the body. The deep fascia covers and is separating and protects your skeletal muscles. The fibrous pericardium surrounds the heart. The periosteum is bone, so it surrounds the bone, and then the perichondrium is cartilage. It surrounds the cartilage. So pericardium is surrounding the membrane around the heart, periosteum around the bone, and perichondrium around the cartilage. And if we look at some of the diseases that are affected by inflammation, peritonitis would be an inflamed peritoneum. And because it is in contact and continuous with the entire body, it is going to spread throughout the body. And some of the autoimmune disorders that are affecting these membranes are like systemic lupus and rheumatoid arthritis. So it's a membranous and disease. So the three types of epithelial membranes again, and the difference between the parietal and the visceral, and the fascia, the deep and the superficial. So the three different types of epithelial membranes. If you recall, you have the serous and the mucosa, and then the cutaneous, and the parietal, and then the visceral is next to the organ itself. The parietal is on the outside. Okay, so which membrane contains epithelial tissues? And if you look at that, so epithelial tissues, and it's going to be the pleura. The others are the membranes that are not involved in the epithelium. Okay, So if we look at benign and malignant tumors, you have benign, meaning that they don't spread, and then malignant spread, and then diagnosis and treating of cancer. So your abnormal cell growth is called a tumor or a neoplasm. And again, you have either the benign or the malignant type of cancer. These are a list of the benign tumors. Papilloma is like a wart, and it grows in the epithelium, and it's a projecting mass. The adenoma, in and about the glands. The lymphoma, fat tissue. Some dogs get a lot of that too. Osteoma, it originates in the bone. The myoma, muscle. Angioma, small blood vessels. Nevus, sometimes a skin tumor like a mole. Meningioma, so that would be for the brain and the spinal cord, and then chondroma, which would be cartilage cells. So malignant tumors are classified according to the tissue. A carcinoma is that which is the epithelium, and then the sarcoma is of connective tissue. Leukemia is of white blood cells. Lymphoma is of the lymph, and glioma is of nerves. And here are some pictures of benign and malignant tumors. So these are chondrocytes here that are malignant. This is normal. And this one is of the cartilage. Okay, so some of the signs of cancer, you can look over that. And then diagnosis. Of course, we do biopsy, so that's a microscopic study of the tissues or the cells. Radiography, well, that would be like a X-ray. Ultrasound are waves, radio waves. Computed tomography would be looking at a cross section. MRIs, and that is using the radiation. Let's see what else we have here. Radio waves, and then the PET scan. These newer ones, the tumor marker test actually looks for enzymes because some cancers actually produce more enzymes, and so they check for an increase in the enzymes. Genetic tests, which would be like for mammary tumors, and then staging is they have a system of staging 1, 2, 3, 4. And then some diagnostic pictures for tumors. And the treatment, of course, they combine some of these. They surgically remove the tumor, undergo radiation. Chemotherapy, of course, is a regimen of drugs. Immunotherapy is one that is actually looking at the immune system, trying to fight it. Hormone therapy, primarily used for breast tumors, and then angiogenesis. Many of the cancers they produce blood vessels, and so they try to block that. And some of these others here, a neoplasm, and then the removal is a biopsy. Connective tissue and aging, we have a loss of blood flow, so the blood vessels are not as fluid, and then the tendons and the ligaments become, they are not as elastic. The bones become more brittle and our muscles atrophy. And here's an atrophy of the brain. And that's it. So I will see you and hear from you again. If you have any questions, just email me. And I'm going to go on and do chapter 5. Just don't forget to do the objective quiz for chapter 4 and your test. Your test is upcoming. And check Canvas for the week of the test. You will need to get a proctoring form if you want to go in, and it has to be provided 2 weeks in advance, I think, is what my last email said. But you will need to check the schedule to see what's upcoming. I don't set any due dates for this. Just make sure that you get everything done in time before the end of the semester, but it's to your advantage to just keep up and try to follow the schedule that I have implemented. Okay, talk to you later.